All right, everybody. Nice to see you all here. So today we're going to be talking about financial fluency for product leaders. And why I believe it's actually really important as of now, as we all saw within the last couple of years, I know probably like year or two, a lot of things have changed. And what we're seeing a lot is that while previously it was easy to build a product and you kind of wanted to respond to customer needs and you wanted to understand what was important for the customer, but in most of the cases, we were not necessarily looking at the financial viability of the product itself until it actually became way too late and everybody kind of started seeing some of the layoffs and some of the implications on what was happening when your product actually was not delivering value. So that is something that was also close to heart for me, for lots of the colleagues that I typically speak with. And I started thinking about how can we know at least where we are early on and how can we start step by step changing that process so then we would not be surprised when all of a sudden now we know that product is not delivering value. So with that, I wanted to walk you through how we at my company are thinking about it. And it's just a framework that maybe you're going to find applicable or maybe not. But regardless, maybe it will spark some of the ideas for you how to start thinking about it. So with that, first I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Elena Leonova. I'm a chief product officer at a company called Spryker. We're a digital commerce platform for large enterprises. What it actually means is that we work with those large companies like Toyota, Bosch, Ricoh, and some of the other ones that traditionally were not selling their products online, like an MRI machine or industrial printer or whatever, but we're actually helping to digitize even that segment of the market. There's a lot of other things that I do besides my main work. Also, if you're wondering where my accent is from, so we actually came here together with my little daughter from Texas, but originally I'm from Ukraine, so it's not a Texan accent, it's actually Ukrainian. So with that, let's get started. So I wanted to make this exercise a little bit more practical, so please prepare to have your phones because we're actually going to be using Slido just to run kind of a thought exercise together. So now, let's think about the product decisions that need to be made. So if we go back to the previous slides first. So if we're thinking about the product decision that we need to make, our biggest decision, whether you're in product management or in product operations, is actually to make a decision which functionality you want to prioritize. Where do you want to make your next bet? So here I wanted to give you two examples on how people typically think about it. So let's say you have two features, capabilities, initiatives, doesn't matter how you call it. So feature A, so you have your product, and here is kind of this dashboard that you need to upgrade. You heard from your customers that they want to see a lot of more financials there, they want to run their analytics. It's going to be something that is going to be driving more adoption of your existing customers. And the second one is you want to build this new integration, maybe it's ERP or whatever that might be important for your specific business, but you believe that is going to be helping you win more deals because that's what our sales team is telling us. Obviously, we've all been in that type of situation. So now the question is, based on that information, so you have two initiatives, which one would you actually prioritize? Feature A, which is mostly for your existing customers, or feature B, because you heard from your sales team that is going to be actually something that is driving more revenue, more new revenue. And we're thinking about the current conditions. So now let's take a look. All right, so at this moment, we'll just give it a couple of seconds for everybody to vote. So it seems our feature A, feature B, so basically we're half and half because nobody knows, it's not enough information to actually make a decision, which is fair. So totally understand that. So now let's start thinking about this scenario and how do we actually need to make that decision. Let's go to slides. All right. So most of the time, again, when we make that type of decision, again, whether we're in product or in product operations, and we're helping make that decision, so we look at first intuition. Sometimes something feels right because we heard it from customers. We understood that something is more relevant, or maybe we actually like that feature because I think we all have been in that type of situation. There's always sometimes executive pressure that is being put on us. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who deals with that type of situation, but there's always kind of your CEO or whoever who has that idea, and that's why we need to make this feature, whether or not it makes money or not. That is going to be something that the future will need to tell us. And obviously the customer feedback, which is something that is great and important, but sometimes it doesn't actually directly translate to the money. And then at the end, we all are being surprised because we kind of like, oh my God, we heard this feedback and we were expecting to have so much money made as a result of it, but to our surprise, it didn't come. What is really important here, when we look at all of those different factors, the financial viability early on when we make a decision is not being accounted for. And that's what I would like everybody kind of here to walk away with and start thinking about how can you in your company start thinking about that early on so then you're not surprised, your CEO is not surprised until it's too late. So how we started doing this at Spryker, because also I wanted to be honest that we were not always that great with that either. So we have developed this product investment scorecard, and I'll show you examples of how we thought about it, which actually started or helped us start asking the right questions early on. Then from there, we also started looking at market validation. What do how big is the market? How many customers would actually buy it? How big is that opportunity before we even invest in that type of scenario? We also started thinking about revenue projections. Some companies are better than this, but majority don't even do it until the moment. We also started looking at cost and pricing. And that is something that you also need to take into account. If you develop a certain functionality that you need to maintain on an ongoing basis, it also might require some cloud costs. It might require some additional services. You actually need to understand how much that is going to cost you comparing to the revenue that you expect to make. And only then understand, do you actually have enough customers who are going to buy it for that price? In your traditional ROI and payback, because that's important, historically has been not as important. In theory, should have been, but has not been, mostly because that was not something that people paid attention to. But now in the current market conditions, we all see that that is becoming more and more important. So this is what I wanted to show you how we actually do it at our company. So as we were going through a lot of different prioritizations, scenarios and frameworks, we realized that for our company selling to large enterprises, what we need to understand early on is basically kind of those 7 dimensions. First of all, our market is highly competitive. So we need to understand, are we going to be creating that competitive edge with a new functionality, or is it something that is just a table stake? Again, sounds simple because everybody should be doing it. But what we discovered when we started doing this exercise is that when we open up this kind of spreadsheet to everybody within the company, each function, we actually had completely different point of views. Somebody thinks it's a table stake, somebody thinks it's competitive edge, and some people don't even bother kind of about this functionality at all. So this is kind of a Google spreadsheet, which is really simple, but you can kind of add everybody an ability to comment. Product team takes the first pass, and then you will see, sales think it's a competitive edge. Somebody else thinks it doesn't matter at all. And that's kind of where you start getting that alignment early on. For us, also win rate. Again, we are enterprise software, so we have to go actively to sell to our customers, and we want to increase that win rate. We want to be winning way more. And sometimes you would think that competitive edge and win rate are the same, but in reality they are different because winning might be actually dependent on, for example, customers expecting certain functionality, or maybe appealing to a certain segment, or even kind of comparing to your pipeline of customers that you have and understanding whether that specific functionality is going to be actually allowing you to sell more deals. That's again kind of where we started seeing a lot of different opinions about whether this one is going to be something that is going to be helping us win deals, or maybe it's not going to actually even make any difference. Another important criteria here that we had, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's just a framework for you to start thinking about. So for example, for us, it was really important to understand customer time to value. Again, we're talking about enterprise software, people paying a lot of money for that type of software, and they want, in the current conditions, to start realizing that value as quickly as possible. ROI on their side matters a lot. That's why we wanted to do everything possible for customers to go live with their software as soon as possible, because that would allow us to become stickier, to start realizing the value. So those were the questions that we started asking. And then as we started ranking kind of those features, we started seeing some of the patterns as well as early disagreements within the company on where we need to invest and where we shouldn't. And that is something that, as I already mentioned, we have not had for a long time ourselves as well. Now, I wanted to also get perspectives from all of you guys, because you obviously work in different segments and in different types of companies. What are the other criteria besides the ones that I gave you that you're typically looking at when you prioritize your new initiatives or capabilities? There's going to be another slide out that we can pull. So we see strategic enablement, capacity. Yeah, capacity is also really good. Because obviously, like, you need to understand, do you have the capability, actually, like the time. Bandwidth, effort. Yeah, perfect. So it seems like effort and capacity are the ones that are at the top. But even here, so kind of since we're seeing those two patterns, I would encourage everybody to start thinking about not just efforts and capacity, because that is something that sometimes leads us to kind of like misleading results, right? Because if you only prioritize based on your effort and capacity, you actually might end up building something that you can fit, but not make any difference for the company. So therefore, it's really important to broaden your perspectives. Yeah, our C-suite feelings, this is wonderful. I feel like that is something that we all are experiencing, whether we like it or not. Yeah, absolutely. But now I start seeing also some other KPIs here, it's like revenue and ARR. But the question is, how do you actually get to those numbers? How do you know how much revenue and ARR are you actually going to have? So this is going to be something that we're going to look at next. All right. So now let's imagine that we just quickly did kind of this exercise and we scored those two features for this fictitious company according to the same criteria that I used at Spryker. So now what we see is basically the capability A, dashboard upgrade, seems kind of all of the kind of leading financial indicators or competitive indicators comparing to capacity are actually more leading features. So previously we were saying, well, I know we actually don't know, 50-50, maybe A, maybe B. But now it seems like our dashboard upgrade is a little bit more winning because here we scored for some specific criteria here. For example, it's actually going to be more competitive than we thought it's going to be. Another thing that kind of what we're also typically doing, even after we did kind of this initial scoring, because it's not possible to go into scoring of all 50 ideas that you have at kind of your TAM, SAM, SUM, like it's way too much work. So we kind of typically first do kind of this first round of scoring, and then for the leading 10, let's say, then we're going to go into TAM, SAM, SUM, and kind of some of the other factors that we're going to be doing. So here, so what we started doing is that in addition to kind of this fictitious TAM and SAM, we started asking our salespeople, if we were to have this feature, can you give us a list of prospects or even existing customers for whom we can actually go and offer this? Because sometimes your TAM number and SAM number might seem big, but then you look at your actual customer pipeline and there's only 5 customers at best, or maybe 1. And what we started seeing is that kind of that type of conversation actually needs to happen. Like you need to have the kind of real check of is there some kind of market for it or not, of actual people that you have access to, not hypothetical customers that you, in an ideal world, can actually attract. We also started asking ourselves this question, is this new functionality that we're going to be building does it need to be kind of just a new free product that we offer, or can we actually make it for an additional price? And in many cases, we started seeing that as long as the new product has been differentiating and competitive, you can actually have a separate price for that product, and your customers would appreciate that type of strategy as well, because you don't need to force them to consume kind of the larger product while kind of they actually don't need it, but only for those ones who want to have advantage of this new capability, and they actually now have an option to purchase it separately. So kind of let's imagine that now we have run those analyses and we have decided that for both of those features, whether it's kind of this new dashboard or this new integration, we're actually going to be charging money. And maybe we're going to be using completely different pricing strategies for it. But the revenue or the prices, how much we're going to be charging for, are going to be kind of slightly different, and that will lead to a different number of revenue. So this is going to be like your 20K for feature A and 30K for feature B. So from there, what we started doing is we started thinking about okay, so let's think about if those are going to be the prices or the revenues, kind of like how much we're actually planning to make money, how many actual customers we can access. And as you can see here, let's say we run this analysis for the feature A, we have 1,000 customers. For feature A, we have 500. The win rate is going to be 5%, meaning that only 5% across both of those cohorts are going to convert. So this is actually how much revenue we would be making here. So now we believe that we're actually going to be making about $1 million with our new dashboard that we can offer as a separate SKU, while for the new integration, we would be able to make $750. Then another thing that we also started looking at is now, once we have this basic math done, now let's start thinking about how much time we actually will need in order to have the payback to come in. So what is our ROI and what is our payback? And if we imagine that we basically invested, for simplicity, the same amount of time to build both of those features, so not to go into details, what we actually see is that we are seeing pretty much the same payback, about 3 to 4 months, so it doesn't make any difference. But the ROI is a little bit different because one feature is going to be making more money, another one is making less money. So now, with all of those different factors that we just looked at, let's run another vote. And let's see, now imagine that you guys all did this exercise, and you started looking at your pricing. You also looked at your projected revenues, your payback, your ROI. Now having that type of information, which of those two feature functions you would actually prioritize? Is it going to be A or B? Okay. It seems that the feature A is leading for now. I would guess it's probably because it's supposed to, it has a better ROI and supposed to make us a little bit more money by 250, so which is not bad. Now, having said that, I now see more people voting for this new integrations. I guess not to feel bad for this integration as well. All right. Any more votes? All right. Well, all right. So now what we're seeing is that before, at the initial presentation, when we talk about those two new capabilities, one is for existing customers, another one is for new customers, we all were unsure which one to choose. Now we went through this fictitious exercise where I just throw in some questions at you and some numbers. And now what we see is that the votes have changed already. And it's because you started thinking about some of the other factors that you were not considering at the beginning. And that's exactly what the purpose of this exercise is. Whatever the criteria are going to be for you, and especially for you in product operations roles that are driving that change within your product organizations and coordinating that work together with other teams, it's important to understand what are going to be the criteria, what are the leading and the lagging indicators that are important early on to decide which features are going to be actually delivering value, not in terms of just kind of this customer value, but also going to be translated to the financial impact to the company. And do we actually have access to those customers in order to make that decision? So while we looked at all of it, the funny story here is that even though we now voted mostly for the feature A, and at the beginning we didn't know which one, the final answer actually is still that it still depends on your company, which one you're actually going to be prioritizing. So the takeaway here is that, let's say if you're thinking about your company and your company is actually profitable and you have a long runway and you don't need to actually immediately go for something that is going to be delivering immediate revenue to you, you can actually completely prioritize feature B if that is going to be delivering more strategic value down the road. If you actually press for the money right now and you do need to have the revenue coming in early on, maybe feature A is exactly what you need to have at the moment. So understanding that kind of bigger context and that financial stability of your company and also how much runway you still have within your company is really important regardless of any numbers that you run here. So even though we kind of decided feature A is what we want to go for, you still would need to have the conversation with your C-suite or your leadership team to understand what are the other strategic objectives that are important right now in order to make that decision. So even though numbers tell us something, know that numbers are never a complete story. And I hope that this exercise has been helpful to you. Hopefully it broadened your perspectives and got you some ideas what to think about. And maybe there's going to be something that you can apply in your roles as well. I also wanted to leave you with some resources that I personally found really helpful and also my team found really helpful. You're going to get, all of those are actually links here, but I know you will not be able to click on them until you get the presentation. But just know that all of those different resources that are listed here is something that I personally found really valuable to deepen your understanding on how to think about financial viability of different features and functions. You obviously would be able to get access to them. And with that, thank you all so much. I hope you found it helpful and happy to answer any questions.
How do you deal with a sales organization and a go-to-market team that wants to dictate pricing?
That's an excellent question. So we, sales and marketing or just sales?
It's sales and like our go-to-market team.
Go-to-market team. Well, so what we started doing so first of all, it's hard. Like, I'll admit that. I think it's definitely really hard. One of the things that we're definitely doing is we started looking at kind of both approaches, not just like top-down where they dictate the price, but we also started doing the gut check from our perspective of like bottoms up, where we say, okay, so let's take a look at this functionality specifically. What is the cost? But also, so what are all the different things that go into that? And what kind of margin we can actually afford ourselves? What we also found in software, I would assume that most of you work in software companies, like you would typically expect to have that 80% margin. But not in all the cases, you can actually have that. Sometimes, I know your product might not be delivering that much value to justify for something, or if you actually like white labeling or maybe reselling something, where I know it's going to be hard to actually have that 80% margin. So in summary, what we started doing is we would kind of have the market feel for the price that customers want. And we'll take it as one input. And then we're also going to look like bottoms up on like what are the costs associated with that, what is going to be the perceived value that our customers might be getting from it, and then compare. Because if the market expects something for 10K and our cost is already 8K, likely there's not going to be that much market. So we kind of started doing kind of that type of analysis early on. And that also helped us understand that while you might have something that is perfect on paper, customers expect it for a much lower price than what we can offer, and therefore it doesn't make sense.
Oh.
Hi, my name is Phoebe. I'm from Hearst Newspapers. So I just had a question specifically on the costs that you were just talking about. So how are you estimating investment / like implementation effort and maintenance per year? Is it based on capacity and like average salary of your engineers and developers? Are you working with your BI or finance teams to validate your numbers? Just interested because we're also doing some impact estimation, and we've just started doing more financial impact stuff.
So there's two parts to that. I think it's one of the easiest things is to understand how much investment from like resource perspective you're actually making into an investment, right? Like we all work in whatever the methodology that we're following it, whether it's agile, waterfall, whatever. I know you take a number and kind of we have the numbers of average engineer that we get from finance. We also do the same kind of back on a napkin type of analysis for the maintenance cost. However, what we also started seeing is that most of the time it's not just that number that is important. We also needed to understand the infrastructure costs that go into that. What are the different tools that we're using? I know how we're going to be scaling. Like if the customer, for example, let's say we're using this integration or we have built that integration, right? And it's going to be dependent on the amount of data or maybe number of API calls. So we need to understand how much, like are there going to be tiers? Are the prices going to change depending on the volume and the usage? And that was something that early on we were not looking at until kind of we started seeing that sometimes that's exactly what kills our margin because we expect for a certain default load and then our customers start doing something completely different. So, so we typically take into account both of those categories, both the initial load, like initial implementation, maintenance, which is, I believe is easier, and then also kind of have a much more detailed understanding of everything that happens after, like all the services, all the compute, like all of those different things that you would think about.
I think I'm next. Hi. Who in your organization are you expecting to have different levels of this financial fluency? Is it you as CPO and your VPs? Are you training it down into product management layer as well? Like, can you give some commentary on that?
Yeah. So I believe, like, what has changed for us, because like I've been with my company for 3 years, and when I joined, it was mostly expected to be at the like C level, kind of where I know like the product and engineering teams and everybody are going to be building features, functions. And yes, kind of like we would understand some like what is the value of it, like for the customer, but not to have like this understanding of the financial viability of it. And kind of, we all saw what has been happening within the last two to 3 years with the markets. And what I started seeing is that the moment when we started communicating that more to each individual product managers and kind of involving them into the process, as well as engineers actually, we started seeing much better results because now instead of just somebody like on the engineering side pushing for a certain service, a certain technology because it's a cooler technology, now they started also looking at like, oh, okay, kind of like we're actually going to be building this. We need to check in with the product manager to understand if the ROI and the margins are going to make sense. And what we started seeing is like, kind of first of all, everybody started thinking more about the financial viability or financial stability of the entire company, but also the quality of decisions have improved. And I also personally don't need to spend that much time now convincing every single person or explaining them why we're not going to go with that technology, because previously it was with me, and kind of like I always had to push back pretty much, or that's how people saw it, which now has changed completely. So therefore, I truly believe that that needs to be kind of trickled down to everybody as much as possible.
In your framework, you had different weightages for different teams. Mm-hmm. How do you drive alignment across teams that that's the right weightage?
Mm-hmm. So obviously, like I showed you only kind of a small preview of kind of this whole framework, so what we have done is, like, first we spend a lot of time with executive team talking about what are the criteria that are important to us, what are kind of those factors. And then we started talking, like everybody obviously wanted to have their factors. Sales wanted to have the win rate, marketing wanted to have competitive intelligence and differentiation, so everybody kind of cares about their own stuff. We kind of got to that list first, and then we started saying, like, how important is the thing in order for us to be the next leading company. Like, how important is that for us? So for example, we saw that win rate was more important tactically now because we need to have more deals. So we would rather focus on that. In some other kind of years, maybe competitiveness is kind of something that is more important because we already have the financial stability underneath. So that is kind of like first aligning on what the criteria are, and then having that conversation of what are the strategic objectives, I guess, for now, and that will kind of help you determine how do you split the pie because it's only 100%, so everybody kind of needs to get a little bit of the pie only. I think we are actually at time, so thank you all so much. If you found this helpful, feel free to reach out. I'm always available on LinkedIn, and I would be happy to share even more with you. So thank you so much again, and